let's talk about it.
Hello and welcome back to Thicc Radio, the award-winning podcast where we talk about gaming, fetism, and everything plus size. I'm James.
And I'm Tim, so let's get into it. Our guest today is a dating and relationship coach for all genders, sexualities, and body types, but most of his clients are gainers, encouragers, chubs, chasers, and bears. His Instagram is datecoachdotcom if you want to message him for a free intro session. So today we're welcoming to the show Noah Heymann.
Thank you, guys. So excited to be here.
Hey! How you doing, baby? You all right?
Yeah, I'm doing really good. It's good to see you guys. I know it's the middle of the night for James, so I appreciate it. Just put the kids down and ready to talk about gainers and dating and all the stuff.
Oh, marvelous. We were actually pretty chuffed. So, full disclosure, y'all, someone had recommended to us, just cash, like, oh, have you thought about reaching out to like one of them services that like helps connect people with guests? And obviously because we just primarily talk to people in the community, that's like never been a thought for us. So we did, just as like a shits and giggles, to be like, who's out there who want to talk to us? And then like we also went through the website, we saw your profile, and we happened to make a note to be like, oh, it'd be really cute to like catch up with this person at some stage. You were the first motherfucker who responded to our shit, and so we were just like, oh well, okay then, okay. So, you know, since day
they
job, we were
emailed
like,
me to say, do you think this would be something you're sponsoring? Now, normally it's something completely silly about like somebody's, you know, interested in asking about breadcrumbing or, you know, these kinds of like just these random things, and I'm generally in the space or whatever. But this was like, these are my guys. Yeah, absolutely. So,
What's breadcrumbing?
Brett, no, don't make me define all the terms.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just like, I've never heard this before. What's
my big
breadcrumbing?
answer, giving little like tidbits to someone.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Figure of speech. I was like, I didn't know if that was some kind of sex act I wasn't aware of.
No. The problem is people use all of these terms so much in modern dating, and I say don't use them at all because people have different ideas for each term, and it's better to actually just say what you mean, right? Mm-hmm. Because people might have slightly different ideas of like what exactly is that? Yeah.
y'all, we are introing a conversation on gaining and dating today, and we are already getting free advice, which is fantastic. But also, good to clarify, because in this community, I have no doubt that there is a motherfucker who would find it very sexy to, like, I don't know, like, dip you in egg wash and then a breadcrumb and deep fry you or bake you at 350 for an hour or so. Like, so it's good to, like...
Hansel and Gretel, that's got to be a specific kink that someone has.
Oh,
right?
it is. It very much is.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, you know what? Y'all, we are talking about dating today. So, you know what? Let's keep it cute to start. What is a date coach?
So, it's somebody who helps you meet your dating goals, right? They usually help through things like, where should I look in person? Or how do I approach someone in person? Or what apps should I be on? Or what should my profile be? Or my photos? Or how do I message people? Or once I'm on the date, my conversation technique, or my body confidence, or my sex technique. Some dating coaches will dip into relationship coaching a little bit. I do that. Some will be therapy adjacent. Some might even be therapists. Some, very few, like mainly me, will be very statistical and like dive into that aspect of it, of what exactly works according to the data. And they're generally like nice, charismatic people who want to help you. And they are not matchmakers. They might do that as well, but most of us who've looked at the data see that matchmaking simply doesn't work, even though it's very profitable, right? People will pay you a lot of money for the fallacy that you can just be introduced to your future partner and not have to do any work yourself. And I do not do it. So that's the big thing. Oh, so it's matchmaking. I say this whole minute-long thing of what it is. And people are like, oh, so matchmaking. I'm like, you didn't listen to a word.
The only carryover from a matchmaker that I think I would approve of there is you as like the fat lady from Mulan in a very gruff voice being like, now pour the tea, tell me everything. You know, that I would go with. I don't like most people anyways. I don't know if I trust a bitch of any designation. Like, pick someone out for me.
Well, not to
That's
mention actual matchmaking is really expensive. Like it's thousands and thousands of dollars to pay somebody to like find your future spouse. Like, and
General
I don't know how many of them end up being successful, but if you're going to shell out that much money, you better get some kind of result.
the general cost is $1,000 per date, and generally people's response is, "This is the same quality of people I was finding online just myself." And why wouldn't it be? Why could some random person have some secret list of the real good ones who aren't dating online, just want to date? Why would they know better than you what you want? Even AI, right? All of or most of these like Hinge and Bumble and OkCupid and Match have a matching algorithm, right? And the data on that shows it doesn't work yet. It's not good enough yet.
well, there you have. And then the outro plays. Like, there's your answer, people. This shit's cooked.
Let's talk about it.
No, but I would imagine someone like yourself, like, it probably really does help to cut through the noise a bit. But I mean, like, what led you to like date coaching as a career?
Yeah, I'll give you kind of my whole story because yeah, this is my second career. I was a 12-year-old kid in New York City, and I was like, ooh, fat boys. What's up with that? Right? Something good. What do you do with them? Is it something with their bellies? What do you do with them? And it was confusing. And I knew I wasn't gay because I wasn't femme and it was the 90s and gay was bad and I wasn't bad and all that shit. And then by high school, I'm like, oh, actually, I'm gay. And these other people are actually straight. They're not kidding. They really like girls. That was very confusing. And I was still closeted all the way through college. And I missed the opportunity to study psychology and sexuality and the things I wanted to in college because that would have outed me because only gay guys study that. And so I got on this other career path into the foreign service. And I became a diplomat. And it was a pretty cool career in some ways as well. And I got to live in all these countries and do that, for more than a decade. But as time wore on, I started dipping into date coaching as a hobby. I started reading what works in online profiles and in messaging. And I started reading books on coaching and sex and sexuality and gender and attachment theory and all this stuff. And I started helping my friends. And I really fucking loved it. And I was great at it. And I couldn't stand seeing great guys lonely, which some of my friends were. And it started to feel after a while like I was closeted again. That feeling of like I'm doing the wrong thing with my life, right? Like I was with my college girlfriend. Like there was nothing wrong with her per se. It just didn't get me excited in the morning, right? And neither did being a diplomat anymore. And my last excuse before I threw away a great career to do a crazy career was, well, I want to start with my community, and my community is very small. So I can't, right? There's just not enough of us anywhere. And then March 2020, everyone's on Zoom. I'm like, oh, you have no excuse, right? And I found datecoachdotcom and bought it and was off to the races.
Reflecting on that, we also started pandemic, and I do feel like as much as, of course, plenty of people probably started a lot of projects, maybe they don't keep up with it these days, it's interesting how many people, when given the opportunity to just slap across the face, shut the fuck up and do the thing, goddammit, like actually did the thing, and now they're like, oh, shit, thank you, COVID, actually, because now I'm operating in a thing that I feel really good about, and very nice to take away at least one positive thing from that horrible experience. So, kudos. That's fantastic stuff.
I think I would have gotten there anyway eventually, but I don't want to be thankful for COVID, but it is probably like when your mom catches you looking at porn in 8th grade. You're like, damn it, this sucks, but I'm happy I'm now outed, right? Like, there was a silver lining at least.
So we're curious to ask. We had a couple of gainer friends submit some questions, and seeing as how our audience is mostly gainers, first question they ask is, how do I balance my gainer needs with my typical dating desires? Because like I feel that a lot of us go into the dating pool worried that at some point we're going to reveal this secret to the person that we're dating and be like, because unfortunately a lot of us do sort of wind up dating people who are way removed from the community, and there's this built-up fear of the day that I confess that I'm into getting fatter is the day that they're going to be like, oh, I don't know about all that. So what would you say to those people?
Absolutely. Well, one thing is, since you guys are members of this community, and since I'm a coach used to asking a lot of questions, the other person talking about themselves, and I'm now the interview subject, and I'm not thrilled to only be talking. So if you guys have a genuine feeling to add on to what your friends have told you, please interject it. If I'm not answering, please ask it away, because I want to be useful to you and to your audience, right? And yes, they are mostly gainers and encouragers and our community. I think it's great. So this feeling among a lot of my gainer and encourager clients and friends of how do I date with this thing that I don't want to reveal because he might dump me and stuff like that. My first bit of advice is come out. Okay. Come out as soon as possible and as completely as possible, right? There is nothing shameful about any sexuality. As long as it's between consenting adults, there is no shame, right? There should be no shame, at least. And if you were able to come out as gay and you know how hard that was, this is just another coming out, right? You will feel better. You will also help the community. We will be less stigmatized the more people are out there being themselves. The people you date will also feel validated, right? If you can, if they have to pretend like you're disappointed in them, that they're fat in front of your mother and blah, blah, all that stuff feels worse, right? So you will be a better boyfriend or a better first date or whatever if you can own who you are and let them own who they are, right? So what does coming out look like besides telling people as much as you're able? Is putting it in your profile, right? If you're on Grommr, we're going to assume you have some type of gainer encourager thing. But if you're on Grinder or Growler or Scruff or blah, 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 right? Most of them have an ability to click the button that says gainer encourager or something. And if it doesn't, then when you talk about yourself, throw in that word, right? And if they didn't read your profile, that's bad on them, but we should still talk it out, right? When we're talking through before we meet, so many gays are like top or bottom, right? Or do you make out? Do you have any STIs? This kind of stuff, right? If you can say that, you can also say this fundamental part of your sexuality. For most gainers and encouragers, it's fundamental, right? Now, there are some where it's not as fundamental, right? It's a fun, like I don't need anal, I don't need gainer, right? I don't need it. Okay, you have to decide that for yourself. And maybe you can be like those bi guys who are closeted and do that thing, right? But the first thing to do is come out. And then what if, the question is coming from somebody who's in a 10-year relationship and they've never told their partner, right? What do I do now? Well, I would still say come out, but without trying to make it less threatening to them, right? So what does this mean for us if I say no, right? I don't want to do that. Well, are we open? Can I do it with other people? Is that a threat to you? But ultimately, being yourself, they're a good partner. They should accept you. And it might be unfair. It was unfair of you to not tell them for 10 years, but man, it doesn't get better. Your sexuality doesn't generally go away, right? So it would be nice. And I know too many people this way who don't share a fundamental kink or sexuality or something with their partner for so many years, and it just festers. It doesn't get better.
Yeah, it's almost like the fact that we take on the mantle of radical physical transformation that changes every aspect of our lives is because it's something so core to us that we wouldn't do it if it wasn't. So, like, of course it should be, like, part and parcel for the conversations that we have. We often have this conversation when the question comes up, how do I navigate conversations with family members about my weight gain? Because, of course, they don't know. Maybe. I don't know. But let's assume they don't know. They're commenting because in their minds they go, oh, this person I love, my child, my sibling, maybe they have an eating disorder and I need to be the person who brings it up to them and says, I have concerns, I feel a type of way about this. The answer every time is stand 10 toes down on your bullshit and just be like, I'm actually okay with who I am.
Yeah.
The point you make about not being threatening, I think, is that thing of, like, if you can metastasize and understand, like, what your gaining desire is and, like, know that it's correct for you, then, like, do that to the point where you have the language and the confidence that if your other partner that you're coming out to, and by that logic, they aren't going to be a gainer encourager themselves, like, they don't have the language to navigate this. So you need to develop that so that when they inevitably panic and they go, what does this mean? I don't understand, that you can calmly lead them through the realities of what that experience is, what those ideas are going to look like, so that they don't then have to like panic and think that it's some kind of horrible thing.
Something that I've noticed that people do, and I don't know how much of it is consciously or subconsciously, but it's like when someone is criticizing you, if you immediately fall back, if you immediately like try to diminish yourself there, and I don't know if it's like an intentional sort of maliciousness, but that creates an inroad for whatever they want to impress upon you. So
Absolutely.
like if you back down, they're just going to keep pushing forward because they see that the armor has chinked or something has cracked so that they can get in, and like I said, I think people do this to varying degrees of like I guess it depends on who it is. Like a mother, maybe trying to be coming at you with love, even though it comes off as manipulation. A friend doing this to you is not really a friend. So
Yeah, it's the we teach people how to treat us thing.
I think, educating yourself helps, right? I know you guys know of the Maintenance Phase podcast. It says a lot of great things about, like, in a very scientific way. It's a fun podcast. Like, is fat bad for you? Not necessarily. Is there a way to lose weight anyway? Not clearly. Is there anything wrong with it? Why do people focus on this and not on cholesterol or something? Because they hate fat people. And even if gaining in and of itself were bad for your longevity, your health, or whatever, it's still your fucking life, right? You can still make that choice, right? If you told some male to female or female to male, someone who was transitioning, right, that like actually that hormone could reduce your lifespan by 6 months or something like that. Okay, thanks for letting me know. I'm going to do my fucking thing now, right? It's up to you. And gainers and encouragers are making compromise. They are well informed of their own health, and they'll do it their own way, right? It's not any of your business.
there's a lot of when our community gets brought up in a negative way, it's like sometimes on rare occasions they focus on somebody who's into death fetism, and they try to seem as if or they try to paint it with a brush that like we're all secretly hoping that like that we're all into that or whatever. But we've talked dozens of times now on the show about how anyone who is actually like a true death fetist, they have a plan in place. They've done the research. They know what they're going to be doing. They know that their partner is going to continue to be with them as they grow to a size where they can no longer care for themselves. Like, this has been meticulously planned out. It's not something that happens on a whim, So.
I think taking these, everyone's trying to like narrow the community as a way to like win their argument, right? Like gays but exclude the trans people, or gays but exclude the chubby people, or chubby but exclude the gainer people, or gainers but exclude the death feeders, right? Like these are people who are making their own choices. Not, is it possible that there's mental illness in somebody? Sure, and they can go to their therapist and talk that through, right? But that is not a way to dismiss everybody by, they keep segmenting us smaller and smaller when everybody should be welcome.
And then the next question was, should I put my gaining on hold to date someone?
Oh, no, right? Like, just be yourself, right? This was a quick one for me. Don't put your gaining on hold unless you want to, right? You can put your gaining on hold if that's what you want. But that feeling of gaining I haven't found, go away in the long term. So if you put it on hold and they like you at that point, well, what good is that if you want to stay with them? Right. So be yourself consistently, and any kind of code switching is just a recipe for disaster later.
You know what? I love that. that was nice and concise. Where it's like, don't do that. that's not going to serve you. Which, again, you're to that point. Life is short. Date within your kink. Do what you want to do. Of course, your life is your own. But also, if you care enough about this to want to do the thing, like, it's clearly strong and potent. So, like, deflections are probably not going to serve you, we should say. And I just want to address here, you'd mentioned you have gainer encourager clients and you have gainer encourager friends. I want to take a second here to really highlight that, because again, at this time of the podcast, we're looking to try and bring some other people on who are aligned, of course, with the plus size perspective of everything, but like, of all the alignments, like, you're very much, like, in the thing and out here making space for people who are actively like us. And so, obviously, y'all, part and parcel of today is we would like to encourage y'all that if you are looking to date and you would like a little bit of assistance on that front, then maybe, just maybe, you could check out datecoachdotcom and maybe have a free intro session, maybe send an email, maybe inquire, do some research, talk to our good buddy Noah, because this is going to be a lot of fun, you know?
I appreciate it. I mean, it is true. It is a free, I will chat with you for an hour. And, you know, my husband is like, why do you give people so much time? I don't know. I'm a sucker. But, you know, it's important to understand, is this somebody who I'm aligned with, who I can help, right? If they're intent on being inauthentic in their dating, I don't want to coach them. That's actually not somebody I want to take as a client. Occasionally, people are so traumatized by certain things that I think they need therapy before they can do coaching. There are reasons why I wouldn't start coaching with somebody. But yeah, they can find me on my website. Also, the Instagram, datecoachdotcom. Direct message me there and see a lot of dorky videos and stuff. It's fun, but I love our community. I love it, and I appreciate you guys.
Of course. Now listen, I'm going to ask here, what are some unique dating tips for gainers, encouragers, and others with weight-driven attractions? And I think weight-driven attractions is important verbiage here, because this is, I think, the point where we start to address, as much as there are terms and labels and identities that are very siloed, i.e. gainers are not chubs, chasers are not bears,
Yep.
Sometimes the Venn diagram is a bit of a circle, you know. So, like, what are some unique and specified tips and tricks for people who are a part of our melange, amorphous shaping of people who love the chubbins and the biggins?
Yeah, I think it's important to find the right apps, right? If you're on Grommr and you're not a gainer or an encourager, it's going to be a confusing place for you, right? Whereas if you're on Bigger City or Growler, Grindr, this Bigger City has gainers and encouragers for sure, but it's going to be a lot of people who are going to be confused and not kind of understand. And then occasionally you'll run into people on Bigger City who are like, I'm 150 and looking for 150. Why are you on this side, right? So be sure you're on the right side. And then, when I would say, as I've said before, be upfront with what you're looking for, what your type is. It's all valid, right? And these sites really allow you to specify an unbelievable specificity. Once we're veering into like sex, right? Something like Grommr allows you to click a lot of buttons that get very specific in kinks. I think those are fun. Those are cool. That's a good way to do it if those are important to you. Another way to do that, let's say you've met on Grindr or something that doesn't allow you to click the word blueberry or whatever, you're like these very specific things. There are tons of different ways, like Jar of Kinks and tier makers and stuff, to do pictographic representations of what you're into. Because this stuff can be hard and also very long-winded to talk through, right? I like when it's like a magical level of weight gain, like rapid, instant. And I also like flushing. But I don't like burping, but I do. It's like, oh my God, we're talking forever here. So it's nice to have it in one pictographic. And also, is that jar half full or is it fully full or is this a high level or a low level? It's great. And it also normalizes all of it, because so much of this stuff, people feel like, we're so enlightened, right? We're gay. It's like, well, but actually, chub and chaser, that's gross. Oh, I'm so enlightened, I'm a chub and chaser, but gainer, that's gross. I'm so enlightened, I'm a gainer, but blueberry, that's weird. Why would you want to be a blueberry? It's like, well, come on, guys. It's all reasonable. And if you have it on the chart or whatever, even if you don't fill it out, it just normalizes it, right? It allows it to be just a normal part.
The infighting between niche communities I've never understood it. I don't get it. Like, I wanted to look around and be like, everybody thinks that we're fucking weird. Like, can we just all be weird together?
Well, you know what? There is a conversation to be had, and we've talked about this a few times on the podcast, and it feels like it's a theme coming out in this year. Like, there are so many people who never worked through their Christian morality trauma. Whether or not they grew up in church settings is irrelevant, because in the same way that fat phobia comes from racism and racism comes from Christian moralism, is the same thing that all of our judgments about so many facets of society come from the same idea of one thing is better than another. And so many people carry that same idea. They process the thing that they struggle with insofar as it applies to themselves. So let's say gainer. I've resolved the fact that I'm so into Blueberry that it's not even funny, and that's my thing. And then they go into the space and they meet people who are into Vor or Macro Micro for the first time, and then they basically go, heathen, Satanist, burn the witch, and like don't process the fact that like coming into community space and connecting with other people means not just resolving your shit for yourself, but resolving it for everyone else as well. Not just so that you can process that there is more things that you can enjoy, but processing so that you don't then become the fucking asshole in someone else's day, you know? So more of us could afford to do that.
Agreed. You know, a lot of it comes from shame, right? When someone hurts your feelings, right, the go-to is what is their issue that they're attempting to hurt my feelings, right? We can usually use that kind of thing, and that's usually what's going on, right? Somebody's been ashamed or teased or bullied or whatever for so long about this thing that they're finally like, aha, now it's my turn. You don't need to take that turn. Just let everybody live.
You know, there's a fair amount of members of the community who identify either as asexual or belly-sexual, which is like the term that we've kind of adopted now for that, where it's like they want attention to the belly, but then they don't want any other kind of sexual activity to happen. And I've met up with people like that, and I've had a perfectly wonderful time with them. We didn't even kiss, but like that was fine. But like I know that I've talked to a few of them, and they've expressed the fear that like, well, if a guy finds out that I don't ever want to have penetrative sex with him, he's not going to want to be with me because he's going to get bored and he's just going to end up cheating on me and yada yada. Like how would you help, you know, someone who's experiencing that anxiety?
Yeah. So you're right that within gainers and encouragers, there's a little bit less emphasis or less frequent emphasis on penetrative sex, right? I mean, you can even see this on Chaseable versus Grommr, right? That about half of guys on Grommr are listing topping or bottoming as something they're interested in. And on Chaseable, it's probably like 2/3, something like that, right? That's still, you know, a lot of guys who are presumably not gainers and encouragers and who are still not interested in penetrative sex. So it's not like a one-to-one correlation. Either way, I would put it on your profile, what you're actually into, and then talk it out, right? There is nothing shameful about being into topping, being into bottoming, or being into neither, right? Like this is, or even sucking dick, right? Like a lot of people don't want to do that either. And some people don't even want to touch a dick, right? They want to cuddle and make out and rub bellies and this kind of stuff, right? All of it's fine. The only thing that's not fine is not disclosing and misleading stuff, right? You can really talk this stuff out ahead of time. If you're talking with somebody at long distance, you really want to. It would be such a bummer to, you know, I flew all the way to Pittsburgh and it turns out we are completely incompatible sexually. Like, talk it out. Gays have such an advantage, right? Straights are so often defaulting to like, the man is the more dominant one and the man penetrates the woman and there's nothing to talk about here, right? Gays, at least we have to start, like no gay can have zero conversation because then it's what's going in where or nothing going in anywhere, right? Like we have to talk and it's all reasonable, right? So, you know, I hear this from gainers and encouragers, the disappointment of my pool of men shrinking yet further. Yes, that's true, right? If you are, I must top or I must bottom or I must neither, then there are fewer guys, right? By definition. But yet, if that's a must for you, then roll with it. What else are you going to do?
Yeah, like again, what are we arguing here? If it's like I want to have more options for people, it's a little bit like I live in the Midwest. I don't have a car, but I want to go to events and I want to do things. You can't have both. You need to figure something out that gets you from A to B. Like, at some point, you have to acknowledge that you must make a change in order for there to be something different. It's not just that you're not putting the right factors in. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We won't luck into it. And even if we did luck into the perfect partner in some type of sexual way, if we're in the habit of not talking through what we need, there's going to be other things about your relationship, time together, gift giving, finances, cooking, whatever it is that are going to go unsaid, right? Like, so hash it out, hash everything out, keep going.
Yeah, I would also just, speaking from experience of my own dating history, I think the idea of a perfect partner is a fucking lie. I don't think it exists. I really don't. You know,
That's kind of hard for us millennials because we were raised on all that Disney shit. You know, those of us that were alive for the Disney Renaissance, like we got so much of that crap crammed down our throats that we thought it was possible.
true. But you know, I think that is the honest answer. I don't think there is a perfect thing. I think any human being who you come across is going to arrive in your life at the stage of life that they are also in. They can have learned every good thing and be aligned with you on so many other things, but every factor that they went through in their life means they arrived at it for a different reason, which might mean that their traumas are a little less processed, or that their views on things are a little bit more left or right of center. They may know that they need to make further changes. They may have absolute blind spots, and these are things that no amount of trying to screen people will, you know, prevent you from. So, you know, I also think that, like, yeah, communicate and be honest so that if things are deal breakers that you can, like, figure that out soon. But also, like, I don't know, don't, like, shit the bed before you make it, you know?
Yeah, there's a certain threshold of compatibility that you need, and then beyond that, you're going to be working on understanding each other and bridging those gaps and figuring out, is it good enough? If it's not good enough, move on, for sure.
But also, like, I'm curious to know how you feel, like how we should navigate. So, uh, and I'll speak only from my personal experience with this one. With a couple of the super big guys that I have been with over the years, they were not gainers, you know, but they were like, I love my food. I'm obviously really fat. I'm not going to stop eating as much food as I have been. But they got one hint of the gainer thing, one little whiff of it, and they immediately like flipped out, and they were like, "Oh, you're not going to try to make me fatter, are you?" And I'm like, but you just said that you love your food and that you love being big, and you know, so like, what's your approach to that?
Yeah, I think we have to be honest and in trying to understand each other here, and be honest that there is some dissonant aspect frequently between chubs and chasers, between gainers and non-gainers and stuff, and talk that out, right? There is the fundamental fear among a lot of chasers that their chubby partner will one day lose all their weight, right? And what do we do? And there's a fundamental fear among chubby partners of that, like, if I did, would he no longer love me? Right? There's a fundamental fear of chubby guys who didn't want to be chubby and have a lot of fucking feelings about it, right? That's reasonable in this anti-fat society of, wait, are you going to push me in some way, right? Is it going to be, is it going to be deceitful, right? You're going to slip some extra calories in on me, or, are you not going to support me in my potential weight loss journey, or these kind of things, right? We have to talk about these things, at least in a basic way of like, hey, I understand that you have always been fat, have never wanted to be fat, and that's not something you want, and I'm going to love you without any gaining aspect, all right? And he has to say, I understand that you are titillated by gaining, and that's just something that's we're not going to do together. If we're open, you can do it with other guys, or we can play about it in these ways. But there is a slight dissonance here, right? Some slight dissonances can exist, right? I wish we had more sex versus I don't want to have more sex, or I wish we did this. Fine, but if they run as soon as you start talking about who you are, then that's not the guy. That's not the guy who's interested in understanding you. He has to be interested in understanding you and showing progress. Otherwise, not your guy.
I'd like to offer something that I've shared in the past, but this is something that came to mind in the conversation that was being had. I am a queer man. I'm primarily attracted to male-aligned types. And I'm currently partnered with a man as a result of that. When I got into a relationship with this man, I had an understanding of him. I have that same idea of him in my mind, and that's fine. But there exists the eternal potential that one day he may turn around and say to me, James, I'm a woman. I'm trans. And I wonder if maybe that's a similar comparison in this idea of, well, what if my partner decides that they want to have a quintessential change in who they are based on what I'm attracted to? And my answer to that would be the same as here, which is that I don't know how I would respond because I haven't encountered it. So, one, I can't sit there and obsess over that thought as the thing that prevents me from figuring it out as I go along. Because if I did that, I would never achieve anything anyways. But what I also know, because I love my partner, is that if that were to ever happen, I would be centering him and his... I would center her, actually, in that example. I would be centering her experience and what they need in that moment. And that would be what takes front and center. Because in that example, the relationship is not about how do I maintain being in a romantic, intimate thing with this human being right now. It's a question of what can I do to love and support this person. And the end result of that could go in many different ways for many different reasons. Maybe we do stay together because it is the love that we have for one another that subsists. And actually, I then grow to understand that my sexuality and sense of romance goes beyond the linear queerness I thought that I adhered to. Maybe it means we break up because now she, in this example, would need to be on her own, find herself again, rediscover her sense of sexuality, frees me up to go and be with other men because I figured out that that wasn't going to work for me. But regardless of the decision made, it is not about, oh, I am now without because of some shame. It is, no, we simply came to a new place and understanding of one another, and we are now no longer on that particular vector together. And sure, it's a loss in the sense of we are no longer doing what we were doing before. But if I love them, I'm going to show up for them in the way that I need to show up for them in that moment. So I feel like maybe that's how we can process the idea of the people who we love that are larger losing the weight. And for anyone listening who feels some sense of uncertainty about dating a gainer, maybe that's how you can process loving your partner as they grow larger too.
Yeah, the parallel to gender is very clear. I have a client going through exactly that. Like, my client is a chaser and is dating a guy who's quite feminine, who's quite gender queer, who uses kind of he, they, she pronouns, and is relatively young, so it's still unclear even to themselves what they want to be later. And my client is like, I'm a gay man. If they actually are transitioning to being a woman, I don't think I want to be that. Okay, tell them. How can they be honest with you about their expectations of their gender now and in the future if you can't be honest as well, right? And if this is, a very remote possibility, you go in eyes wide open that this might be a possibility that we might not ultimately be right for each other. Or, if it's a very high probability, maybe you ultimately don't move in together, right? Maybe you don't take that step, right? But yeah, you got to talk it out. Yeah, gender and weight are awesome parallel.
Now, there is, of course, a common experience that people will express, which is that the ratio of gainers to encouragers in particular might be a little off in their local area. What's the girl to do?
Yeah, I get the complaint often from clients about whatever the thing is. So it's like, oh, Seattle, everyone's a bottom here. Or, oh my God, in DC, everybody's a gainer. Or, oh my goodness, in this town, everybody's a chaser. There's no chubs, there's no chaser. Whatever it is, I find in reality, the differences are quite minimal from town to town. I do not think, and even from country to country, that like Germans are all chasers and Brazilians are not, or Chinese are all chasers and Canadians are not. I don't believe it. The only actual difference I see from town to town is that like people are fatter in the US generally, and there's certain areas, I don't know, Arkansas is pretty fat and Boulder, Colorado is kind of not, or something like that. But in terms of people's desires, I don't see a big difference. Either way, for chubs and chasers and gainers and encouragers, we are a small community, right? If you try to find like how many gainers and encouragers are there in Omaha, right? Like 15, okay, right? Like it's not hundreds. So the chance that one of these 20 guys or whatever is your lifelong partner is low already, right? We're almost all open to looking long distance, right? So what is the difference, right? Now, if all other things are equal, you work remotely, you don't care about cost of living, blah, 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 and you can move to a bigger city, yeah, by all means, right? Yeah, there's a bigger pool. But that aside, yeah, there's nothing else you can do. So if you're looking long distance, don't worry about it. And it's often like a kind of a cop out. Like, well, there's nothing for me to do. Look farther. I was in a different country from my partner our first year and a half. Yeah, it was hard. It worked.
I feel like once upon a like well when I almost said once upon a time, like I'm not old. But I feel like 20 years ago, the idea of like a long-term relationship in gay world was like the kiss of death. Like nobody wanted to do it, because it was like, oh, I'll never get to fuck you. I'll be too preoccupied with, all the gays that are in my area, and I'll be too tempted, and I'll end up cheating on you, and blah blah blah. But I feel like things, with the more that the internet has grown and the more connected the planet has become, I do see people like much more comfortable with the idea of a long-term thing, even if it means it's a year or more before you physically meet. You're spending that 2 years in between actually getting to know each other. Like people are getting invested in each other's lives, getting to know what the other one wants. And while it's not my preferred method of doing a relationship, I can certainly see the appeal of it, because then after that 2 years, when you actually get to meet for the first time, it's like hopefully the chemistry is there physically. Like that can be a little tricky to navigate, but
yeah, for sure.
Well, like when Tim and I first met, like I said to you, I was nervous about us meeting because we developed such a strong friendship, and I had that moment of fear thinking, like, what if when we're in person you actually can't stand the sound of my voice, Like, what if actually there's something that means that this friendship that we've been having online doesn't go the way we want, and like, yeah, there's anxiety, but
well, and look what happened. You gave me a big bear hug, and then we jumped into a freezing cold pool.
yes, that's
awesome.
true. First thing we did together was
for the long distance stuff. I do think until you meet in person, you got to have a lot of skepticism, big grain of salt, big doubt, because you're right. You could meet and you're like, this guy's stinky, or this guy has just a weird tick I just can't stand. He's always on his phone or whatever. Yeah, until you meet in person, you can't have that much fidelity. But once you do, yeah, you can make distance work. I mean, it's so much easier now with the internet and all the stuff. Like it can work as long as both sides are committed to it and understanding how they want to communicate, and ultimately have some possible path towards one moving to the other. Yeah, it can happen.
Now, there was a question, I think, because as much as we talked around about shame as sort of like, I guess an unspoken thing where people need to maybe realize that it's shame that might be the thing that's holding them back. For people who've maybe come to that point of recognizing that shame is the cause, like, what would you say is like the steps to be taken for that? Like, I understand I have shame, how do I get rid of said shame, basically?
Yeah, it's a really hard one. You first have to figure out what the shame is rooted in, right? Is it gay shame? Is it femininity shame? Is it gainer shame? Is it a combo? I think people often assign it to one thing, and it might be something else, or it might be a couple of things, right? There's some people who think shame is more pervasive than I even do. There's a book, Velvet Rage, it came out 20 years ago, that the thesis is that we all grew up as gay boys in a feeling of otherness, and that we were, as adolescents, so there was something wrong with us, that we were fundamentally unlovable, and that this is why, gay men as adults are maybe particularly focused on their attire or their interior design or their careers, or being hyper femme or hyper masculine or hypersexual or any of that stuff, right? Okay, fair. I'm not sure I go that far, even if they claim they're beyond shame, that he thinks you can't shed it. I think anything related to fatness or loving fatness is going to be an additional layer to that. It would be very hard to imagine someone having never had shame being fat or loving fat in the United States. So first is to try to identify it, right? From there, I think you give it time. There's a million tools that various therapists use, but I think as you embrace your community, right? As you find a community of people who accept you as you are, who you feel comfortable around, that's, a huge step in the right direction, right? This was what I did after college. Before I came out, I moved to DC and I found my group of chubs and chasers and bears and all. And I had that, right? And then when I came out to people, if they didn't accept me, well, I already had people who did. I think the next step after your community is in dating and finding love, people a person or people who really love you, as you are, who like the weird bits of you. I mean, what a thing when somebody likes your bald spot, right? What a thing when somebody likes your crooked teeth, who likes the weird parts of you. That's the ability of love to just melt that shame is pretty powerful, right? But it's hard because it's harder to find love while you have the shame at the same time. So sometimes, you can do it together with the person you're dating, but it's, these kind of things, it's hard to generalize a little bit. And I work with each individual client on where is their shame and how can they fight it, rather than giving 10 ways to beat your shame this summer that works for everybody. I don't have the perfect list for all.
Well, I wonder if there is a way that people could, perhaps reach out to you and find out for themselves if they were dealing with shame, how to, I wonder, perhaps. But it's a mystery. I'm sure we'll never know if there is a way.
You're so good at plugging datecoach.com. I love it. I appreciate it.
Datecoach.com? I've never heard of it, datecoach.com. What is datecoach.com? Tim, have you ever heard of datecoach.com?
No, I have not.
Datecoach.com?
It's just me. Just message me and we'll chat, right? Or send, the people who reach out to me are not the most messed up, most undateable, most, whatever types. The people I coach tend to be relatively smart, relatively committed to self-improvement, a little older than their early 20s. They have to have actually gone through, figured out what the problem is. They do also tend to have a good amount of shame on average, but I think a lot of people do. And we talk it out, right? The people who reach out are not the ones who are most messed up. It's the people who are most open to help, right? So, most of my clients are actually referrals. I only do a podcast, I don't know, once a month or something. And, these are fun, but it's mostly referrals. So the listener is probably not going to be the one who comes. It's going to be, they're going to tell their roommate or their cousin, and I'll chat with them.
Speaking of mysteries I would love to have solved, I need to ask, why are gay men at large so bad at relationships?
It does feel that way sometimes, but I want to come at it from a point of skepticism at first, at least with regard to the divorce rate. Do you guys know the divorce rates for gays, straights, and lesbians?
No, actually, I don't.
I know straight is over 50%. I assume that gays aren't necessarily doing that great. I figure once we got the gay marriage, we were doing great. And then I imagine it took maybe 5 years before we was right down the trenches with the straggots.
You're right that at the beginning, it was a statistical anomaly of just there were a lot of couples that had already been together for more than a decade who could now actually get married. And so they're more likely to stay together. Yeah, that was just statistical nonsense. But these days, with updated data, it's still surprising. Those straights, it's low 40 percentile of marriages that end in divorce. For gays, it's high 20s. We are much less likely to get divorced, but we'll talk about why. And then lesbians, over 70%.
Really?
Sorry,
You know
ladies.
what?
You're crazy.
I wish that I could say that I'm surprised by that, but then I keep thinking about my cousin Kat and how many women she's gone through.
Yeah, I live in a mostly lesbian neighborhood. When we go to queer Brooklyn parents picnics, it's us and 25 lesbians. So I love that my local gay bar is a lesbian bar. But yeah, the marriages, you better be real sure because it's likely going to be a divorce. So, but what's actually going on there, right? Partially it's societal expectations, right? Straights and lesbians are having kids and gays are mostly not. And if you're going to have a kid, you're much more likely to get married when you're going to have that kid, right? So that's kind of an anomaly. There's a lot of gays who break up after 10 years. And what's the difference between that and a divorce really, right? So the divorce rates, it's a little bit of an aside. But are we so bad at relationships? Another thing to keep in mind is without that societal pressure to be in a relationship, maybe some of us don't necessarily want it, right? That we want friends with benefits, and some of us just don't feel the need to have it, right? And I think ultimately people are sadder who are in bad relationships than who are single. And so, yes, all of these straights and lesbians who are staying together for their kids, are they better at relationships or are they just stuck? But if we're worse at relationships, what could it be? It could be that shame thing. It could be, that men don't share their feelings, but I don't believe that because gays do. It could be that we don't see a lot of old gay couples because they died of AIDS. Okay. They're all dead. It's not that they were bad at relationships. They're dead. Okay. So I think a lot of the statistics and beliefs are so clouded by these other things. I think gays are as able to have relationships as anyone else. And, if there are differences, it's so minute that who cares? You can have a relationship if you want one.
I appreciate that reference about AIDS, frankly, because we had this conversation with Dr. John Paul earlier in the season, right? There needs to be a conversation around how, at this time in the world, people love to look at representation and be like, oh, we've been hearing this narrative for 20 years. And it's like, there are still people alive today who remember when the first black family moved into a white neighborhood.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? History was not that long ago. And people love to silo themselves in their own personal bubble of time and go, everything that matters applies to me right now and nothing else is relevant. As if to suggest that gerrymandering that started 200 years back doesn't affect the way that food oases and food deserts apply to culture and suburbs today. It's all fucking connected.
I don't know how pertinent this particular point is, but it's like when I brought up to you, it was like when my parents got married, the Supreme Court decision hadn't even been, I don't even think it was 10 years old by that point.
Mm-hmm.
When my parents got married, and what if that decision had never been made? I could have been born a crime.
Tim has a white mother and a black father. That's relevant. They were together, 10 years prior. It was, these are very relevant things that happen that shape one's experiences and motivations and cultural context, right? Yeah, why don't we have queer elders to reflect on or point to? Majority of them are fucking dead.
They're dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got married on the Oberfeld decision day, right? That was 10 years ago. We got married that day. It feels like, that's a distant history. I don't know. And, it seems like gay marriage will exist for a long time yet to come in the US, but it's not a constant march towards progress. Things can go bad too. Yeah, but mostly I feel, very fortunate. Think about how fortunate we are to live in the time where Americans are so fat, and yet there's also CPAPs. There's also, statins and lisinopril and all of that stuff. And there's the internet to find each other. Yeah, it's hard to find your other 15 gainers in Omaha right now. But how about if there were no internet, right? When my partner visited me in Cuba, when I was, posted there, this was 15 years ago, this was a country with food rationing. There were no fat people. And the way that some guys looked at him, I knew immediately. They had no fat people, they had no internet. They saw this fat man, and some of these men were looking at him in a way that I knew said that thought they were asexual, and what is this? Okay? They had never seen one. That I got, I have such an advantage, and that's still the case in a lot of the world, hopefully less and less. But yeah, how lucky we are to be alive relatively in this time.
I only chuckled because when you said, "Oh, I got married on Oberfeld date," I was like, "Yeah, so did I. I'm glad it worked out for you. It didn't work out for me."
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, it's fine. That was a long time ago. This next question comes from a friend of ours. He wanted to know. So he says, "I've been single for a long time. I've done a lot of introspection and personal work, and my friends tell me that I come across as intimidating. What do you think this means?"
My first thought is it's a lot of introspection and personal work, but too much of that work was happening by yourself. How lovely of your friends to give you that feedback. And if you didn't ask them what it meant, you should ask them what it means, right? Get that feedback. We need to get to the crux of that. How does that look for you? So we have to ask more to make it useful. Generally, I think people are not having enough feedback kind of discussions, like actually constructive discussions with the people they're dating, with the people they're friends with, right? To be able to improve, right? So if we're coming across it as intimidating and kind of like just wondering, not doing about it, let's pursue that feedback from them, right? Like, and we have to be able to give feedback ourselves. I just had a session this afternoon with a really smart client. He's a professor. He works on this stuff, and he is unable to give feedback to people in the right way. He waits. So something irks him, right? In this case, why am I always the one inviting you out? Why are you never the one inviting me out? And I wait until they do something, and then I ambush them, and then they're defensive. And why does it happen that way? Ooh, that is a way unlikely to work, right? So let me share with your listeners 10 things that will help them give better feedback. And what better, I mean, more likely to get a positive change in the other person's actions instead of defensiveness. So first one, take a breath. When you're feeling like, rage, anger, sadness, hurt, try to get out of that space and try to get into that constructive space. Like, how do I actually do something about this? So take that breath, but then don't take too many breaths. Give them timely feedback, right? Not, it's better a minute ago. It's worse a day ago. A year ago, we can't give the feedback anymore. It's too stale. And now it feels like you're just trying to hit somebody. So give it in a timely way. Give it in person. If you send a text or an email with feedback, it just hurts. They're just going to take it negatively. Has to be you, or a video call if you can't be there in person. Has to be in private, not in front of other people where they're going to defend their pride. I didn't do that. You blah, blah, blah. Just the two of you. Be specific to them. When you did this, right? When you show up late, because if you say, I know you don't care about me because of the way you act. Well, what? I do care about you. No, I know you just don't care about me. It's not a specific action. Still, you need that I feel statement in there somewhere, right? Not you don't care about me. You don't, because they can argue how they feel, how they feel about you, but they can't argue how you feel about the situation. So make it that unimpeachable, I feel, this is how I'm feeling from this. Then try to work on that problem together. They're not the problem. It's the problem isn't that they don't call. It's that you have an expectation of more calling than they are providing, right? So how do we bridge that gap? Let's work on it together. These feedback discussions are really hard. And so I often practice them ahead of time, right? I'm looking at an empty chair and I practice a little bit. Also, don't clobber them with too many things at once. Just one at a time, right? It comes to another day, you can have a discussion about another thing. And the last one I have for you is to give positive feedback too. If somebody knows, here's some feedback, it's gonna piss me off. I'm not gonna want to hear this. If instead you're like, hey, that you cooked this meal for me, it just makes me feel so taken care of, right? That kind of like positive feedback is so nice. And in general, so coming back to this like question of why am I so intimidating? Well, first ask them why. Are you talking to people in this kind of way? Or maybe are you giving them some tough style of feedback? But again, it's hard to do it in a general sense without knowing this person. It might be resting bitch face. I have resting sad face, for example, right? And so my feedback to myself on that one is push your cheeks up. Like literally, I'm like practicing smiling, right? You can see when I'm not paying attention and I'm thinking. You guys can see through this video call, like, ooh, is he okay? Yes, I'm okay. That's just my face.
You know how many times I've had to say that? Because people are like, why are you pissed off? I'm like, I'm not pissed off. Now I am, but I wasn't.
Exactly.
I don't have depression, Owen. I've just been in a bad mood for 40 years.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, I do want to inquire here, because obviously we'll use a little bit of a clippage for the Instagram so that people get to see your lovely face. And I'm sure if they click on the links, which they should, they'll get to see your gorgeous smiling face regardless. But I want to be clear here. You are a slender gentleman. I believe you identify as a chaser, right?
Uh-huh. Yep.
So as a chaser yourself, what similarities and differences do you tend to see between the gainer encourager community, chub chaser, and bear?
Maybe I'll go at this from like the point of view of what's the greatest obstacle, the greatest challenge I see in the community. The bears are a very broad community these days. Like there are people who are just a freaking normie slim guy with a beard and he's a bear, right? Or, it's really like they're losing the chubbiness, some of these muscle bears and stuff. The thing I see is the greatest issue is posturing. I see so much posturing to be the better kind of bear, right? When you go to Provincetown Bear Week, there's fewer fat guys at that than in the general gay population, right? It's more, yes, there may be some more beards, but there's a lot of like trying to be the most alpha, like, flashy gay who, the Anderson Cooper kind of thing, but with hair. And I think that's so anathema to like what bear was and what bear hopefully could be again. And for some people still is. This is who I am, right? I'm not going to try to be the fit you want or the smooth that you want or whatever. For chubs and chasers, the greatest issue I see is that's specific to the community is the power dynamic difference of chubs feeling less power and chasers maybe taking advantage of the power, right? That there, at least in the United States, there are fewer chasers than chubs, right? If you go to Europe or you go to South America or something, that's not the case, right? And so chubs often love traveling over those places. And they're like, oh my God, these chasers are so much better. It's not that the chasers are quote unquote better. There's just fewer chubs, okay? You're the only one, so enjoy. But in the US, that weird imbalance, like imagine if the straight community had, twice as many men as women or twice as many women as men, right? Like that, it creates an unfortunate thing. And if women or men, whoever is the more of them in this analogy, were also treated badly by society, so that kind of power dynamic and trying to overcome that and just be freaking reasonable people. The last one, the gainers encouragers, like the difference I see that's distinct to that community is the closet. The closet is so strong, right? You can't hide being fat. There are some closeted chasers out there, but generally, like, if you're going to be with a fat guy, people are going to see. So you might be more likely to come out. But like, God, gainer and encourager is so easy to be closeted about. And it's so pernicious to be closeted in general. So that's the kind of the biggest difference I see in the community.
And it is interesting, again, like hearing these things from like an external perspective and a very objective perspective. Like, I feel like ultimately that's a struggle when you talk like in community about like out community. Like, what does it do when you talk to a bunch of gainers and encouragers? Like, oh, well, the bears, you know what they're about. But like, if you're not actually talking to the bears and trying to like figure that shit out, like you're not really gonna like understand it, right? Or nut through it. You're just gonna reinforce a lot of stuff.
Yeah. No, I'm very privileged to be not a member of the communities I'm a member of, and then being able to talk to so many other people, right? Like I spend all day talking to people about their various, very personal, serious thoughts, right? Even women, right? Like I have a bunch of women over 35, especially in Brooklyn, and I'm constantly dealing with their dating lives and their romantic issues and stuff. And I try to keep in mind all the advantages that come with membership in these smaller communities, right? For me, if I had not been a chaser, if I had just been like a normie guy like my straight friends from college, man, I wouldn't have branched out and found friends who were so socioeconomically different, so ethnically different, so different in age, so different. Like their friends are all the same freaking person. They look the same. They talk the same. They have the same experiences. My friends are not that way, right? Some of them are rich and some are poor and some are decorators and some are working scrap or something. My partner has the Staten Island accent, talks like this. I love it, right? So the smaller your community, the more diverse it is in some other ways, right? There's the excitement that you see in like when gainers get together and talking about their stuff is so different. There is no straight equivalent to that, right? Because they're you would have to be in a very specific, kink community of straights to have that same level of enthusiasm and excitement. So while it's challenging, it's also very beautiful and fun.
Now, I am curious because you are married to a gorgeously large gentleman. I would like to know, how much did you lean on your own coaching expertise to court your husband?
First, James, get in line, but also,
listen now. How? First of all, how dare you? Second of all, yes, but third of all, how dare you? Yes. So you go on.
So we've been together for, I don't know, 15 years or so. So I met him just after I was starting this as a hobby, right? So he was my beta tester in some ways. When we met, man, my profile sucked. It was really bad photos. I wrote really badly about myself. The things that I figured out with him along the way were myriad, and I'm constantly, he is my greatest kind of tester of all the things I do. I did have, fortunately, kind of an innate positive ability that helps in dating of trying to, and I don't mean this in a manipulative way, but how do you communicate with someone, talk with someone, flirt with somebody in a way that allows them to fall in love with you? A lot of people are just not, I wasn't necessarily thinking about it, but this was an area that I was good at. And I'll give you just a few things to think about, right? How do you get somebody to fall in love? One is to treat them kindly, right? It seems really basic and stuff, but like showing up on time, responding to their text, doing nice things for them. Maybe it depends on their love language and how many presents. Like I hate receiving presents. So kind in the way that they want kindness, right? But being kind, being reliable, great start. Another one is curiosity, right? I am insanely curious, right? I wouldn't have become a dating coach otherwise, right? But I am constantly really listening. I'm really asking the questions, not questions because, I have my 20 questions that I have to get to. No, questions I want to know the answer to, right? Questions you don't care about the answer to, that's small talk. Nobody likes that, right? What do you actually want to know, right? You want to know do you want to know about where did his brother go to college? No, you don't care. You want to know about his relationship with his brother. What was that like, right? So show your curiosity. And as you're expressing all this curiosity, you can't judge them, right? They will notice if you're like, that sucks. Nobody likes that, right? And our judgment so often comes from a place of like our own fears about ourselves, of being judged. Well, I want to judge them before they judge me. Our supposed superiority actually comes from a place of inferiority, all of that stuff. But if you can be kind to someone, if you can be curious, and if you're not showing judgment of them, you have a good shot, if you're compatible, to be in love with them. And so that really helped me overcome the difficulty of being in Cuba for that first year and a half with almost no internet. And that boy takes up a lot of bandwidth, so I could not really even video call him because they didn't have much internet down there. Boy takes up some bandwidth.
So I'm curious, how exactly do you gather the data to be a data-driven coach?
Yeah, I mean, I've been gathering it for 16 years, and there are blogs, there are academic articles, there are books. I'm constantly reading. I've read 2 books just on the anus, right? Like, because I need to know everything.
Is there that much to write about?
Oh yeah, right. The first book is, it's a hilarious book. The cover is it's a drawing of someone looking in a mirror as they're squatting, looking lovingly at their own anus. And it's kind of very groovy and stuff. And the second is an anal surgeon and very anatomical stuff. But if I'm going to be helping people have anal sex, I got to know that, right? I've got to know what, every little piece of everything. Now, a lot of people are starting to lean on AI, right? They're asking ChatGPT or whatever for the answers. I've found that AI is pretty good at finding new articles, new books. Has anything new been written in the space? But for interpreting it, AI is horrible. Okay, AI is deceitful. AI is wrong. So far, we'll see in 5 years. But a lot of people, when they write their profiles on they're putting it into AI and it's like, make this better, and then they upload that, and it's always horrible. Okay, it's always vague. It doesn't have any hooks about them. It's just like, passport ready for my next adventure, airplane emoji. They're like, blah. Nobody cares about that. That's not interesting. It's not different. In fact, profiles should be written in quirky, interesting, different ways. And AI is most likely to just regurgitate the most common things. The frustrations I have with finding data are that there is less publishing going on from the dating apps themselves. They used to hire data scientists to crunch their numbers and put out stuff like that more. That's happening less. They're guarding their data more. And they discover that except for some nerds like me, nobody cares about their data. And within our community itself, the owners of, Grokio and Bigger City and stuff have not hired any data scientists to crunch their numbers. Grindr will do it, but it's just a holiday kind of throwaway. The most searched for thing this year is daddies and feet, right? I don't care about that. I want to see a chart with p-values, and I want to know exactly, okay, what was the depth of field of the photo? Let's work in the best. Is it 2.8 or 2.5? I want data. And that is actually getting harder to find, surprisingly.
And what kind of feedback do you get from your clients?
I get great feedback. The way it's most positive is when they refer other people, right? Then I know I'm doing it right. And that's how I find most of my clients. So that feels really good. As for when I'm asking them, how is this going for you? The biggest positive is that feeling before of, am I doing this right? That goes away, right? That's a huge win in and of itself, right? They feel confident that they're doing it right. Now, some then find a partner quickly, and some others are getting more traction. Maybe they're getting more dates and this kind of thing, but they might still be frustrated that they don't yet have a partner. And I do not promise them that like within 6 months you'll have a partner or something. I think of it kind of, I have two images in my mind. The kind of the sales funnel, right? That we have to get like more people to look at our profile, more people to send us a message, and more people to continue messaging, and then more people to go on a date, more people on a third date, more people to be a boyfriend, and ultimately, etc. Right? That kind of sales funnel, right? That we might get 1,000 at the top to get to that one at the bottom. And so trying to like make sure that there's no kinks in that funnel, that we're doing each step of that well. The other way I think of it is like a die roll, right? A lot of my clients are showing up and they're like, it's been 8 years since my last relationship. And I have been trying, right? It's not that they couldn't have found someone during that time. It's just that they're doing it badly. So it's less likely, right? They're not right now rolling a 20-sided die, right? Only one of them is partner something, right? And they're rolling that each year. Whereas if we can improve all of these ways they're dating, maybe we turn it into a 3-sided die, right? And just make it more like, now you can roll a 3-sided die 5 times and get unlucky, but you're not going to roll it 30 times, right? They can be confident that there is love at some point in the future.
Now, on that notion of the clients, I'd be curious, to what extent do people resist the methods that you use to coach them, and how do you convince them to adapt?
Yeah, I think of 3 ways that I see resistance. And the first is not my clients. The first is the people who call me up, they do an intro session, and they don't ultimately do coaching. And the most common reason they don't do it is cost, right? But I'm moderately priced in the field, but coaching does cost money, right? It's not cheap, and there's no insurance for it. The investment from all my clients is like clearly worth it. And I have a lot of clients who are very working class, like really they're working, at Walmart 20 hours a week and that's it. And so I just can see them less frequently, right? Once every couple of months or something like that. But those people who don't ultimately hire me, who just wanted to chat a little at first, I feel like they are not ready. They would not have put in the work anyway. That's the kind of resistance I see there. If this is not important yet enough for them. But of my clients, there's kind of 2 types of resistance I see. One spoken and one is the other. The other is I kind of have to raise it. So the spoken one that they often say is like, I don't want to be phony, right? That taking photos that are really great for my profile, but that's not how I am. I'm not just like that all the time or whatever. And I think that, yes, that's true. But online dating is a contrived exercise, and nobody is expecting 6 perfect candidates of just how you are randomly during the day, where you're sitting at your computer blank-faced or whatever, right? We are putting our best face forward, right? Not a phony face, right? It's authentic to us, but it should be a positive one. So I kind of work with them on that topic of like, we have to be authentic. I do not want to push anyone outside of authenticity, but I want to put it in the most positive light, because that's what people expect to see, right? They're already looking at it through that skeptical lens. The one that I have to raise that people are often doing that's sabotaging themselves is the feeling of like, dating is so hard. You're facing rejection left and right. When you send a message, likely, even if it's a great profile you have with a great message, you still have a 60% chance or whatever to receive no response. You're constantly getting rejected, and it hurts. My clients sometimes feel like it already hurts. If I put my best foot forward and I still fail, I still get rejected, I still don't have a partner, then I am unlovable. Then I am flawed. And so that's, it's all part and parcel of this shame thing. We're working on that. We're seeing ourselves as, from the eyes of our future loving partner, as an attractive, beautiful person. We are realizing that every message we don't send is de facto rejection anyway, right? Let's just look at the positive side of it. But I think those are the two, the kind of, I don't want to be phony, and then the kind of subtext of like, but if I try my hardest and fail, then I am undateable.
So what is next for datecoach.com?
Next is not getting distracted from what I'm doing. I do not want to pivot into something bigger, more grandiose, more ambitious. I have all the materials for a book, and I'm not going to write it. You can't have my book, okay? I could hire other coaches. I've been approached by other coaches. I have a great, datecoach.com is a great URL, and, to hire or train other coaches. I'm not training them. I'm not hiring them. I occasionally run body confidence workshops, dating workshops, singles mingles, speed dating, these kind of things, and do these podcasts because it's kind of fun and different. But what I love is the coaching. I have the best job in the world. Tim, I get to fall in love through my clients over and over and over. And I don't want to change that. So anything else that I would do, I'm pretty fully booked. I would have to do less coaching. I don't want to do that. I can just keep living through referrals. And if I built that empire, yes, maybe my kids could get the organic avocados, but they don't need that. And I want to have my fun. I just want to that first call when someone's like so frustrated. It took so much courage to even reach out to me, right? And that little while later when they're like, should I go on prep? He's moving in, right? Like this kind of stuff. Oh, fuck yeah, man.
That's really sweet. That's nice.
And as a way to sort of round out the conversation, we like to ask this question to everybody. It's it's a bit of a fun question. What food gives you life, and what food brings you peace?
For peace, I'm gonna say chocolate chip cookies. They're so delicious, soft, gooey. I eat a tremendous amount of chocolate, and that is my favorite chocolate delivery mechanism. For life, I cannot narrow it down to a food. It's the aspect of how the food is coming to me. And that is cooking with friends, cooking for friends, cooking with my partner, being cooked for by my partner. The process, it's just, I live in Brooklyn. There's plenty of restaurants. And that kind of cooking together is such a fun part of it for me. And now, with my little kids, right? Yesterday we were, they're doing really bad job of mixing batter with, grandpa to make some crappy little cookies. But that's life.
And, since we have not talked about this once in this entire conversation, I think the last question to ask here is, how on earth is anyone supposed to find you, Noah? I mean, really? We invited you onto our podcast to talk about everything you do, and not once in this entire conversation have you made any effort to tell people where they might be able to find you, and I think that's a failing on your part, and I think you should hang your head in shame, frankly.
I think you're right, James. So, datecoach.com. They can find me there. They can schedule a free intro session. They can message me there. But most people are these days going to Instagram, and it's datecoachdotcom, and can watch all of those videos, and we'll put up a little clip of this, I'm sure. And, I do this like Stump the Date Coach little series these days where people ask me some question and I respond to that. You can see that and, get a sense of my kind of flavor there. And if it's not a good fit, by all means, let's not pursue anything. But if you feel like I could talk to this guy, message me and we'll chat, right? And, coaching, it's just talking through in that first session, what are your goals? And the way I frame it for my clients is like, if everything were perfect, if you could be in the perfect romantic world with no obstacles, what would your perfect romantic life look like? And then we talk through, well, what are your current circumstances? And if people want to do coaching, all we do is we lay out our options of what we could work on. Yeah, we want to work on our profile. We don't want to work on our conversation skills. We do want to work on our body confidence. And we put them in a loose order, and we start working on them one by one. And it's a pretty fast process. It's not therapy. It's not, well, over the next 2 years and 50 sessions, we'll really get to know each other and see if we can make any progress. No, right? A lot of my clients, it might be a dozen sessions. It might be 6, right? But it's such a night and day difference of like, wow, they are going from like feeling invisible to the 8th most messaged person on Bear City, right? They're feeling, I've been single my whole life, and now I have to make a choice between one of these guys because I'm dating both of them, and I have to choose a boyfriend right now because this is starting to feel deceitful. I love seeing that, and I love it, and I look forward to doing it with some of your listeners.
Well, Noah, thank you for the first goddamn time this episode gave us some information to go off of. I mean, really, my God. No, this has been absolutely wonderful, my love. And everyone here, Jesus Christ, go and give this man a follow and some support. And if you are interested, have a call, have a conversation, and see where it takes you. But you know what? I think that is it for now. Here on Thicc Radio, please remember to like and subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and leave us a good review. If you liked this episode, the podcast, our guest, or just us in general, please share it with your friends and encourage them to tune in. You can find me on Instagram and BlueSky at stannnum.
And you can find me on Instagram at thiccymouse and Grommr at Orpheus. You can also find us on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Thicc Radio, or visit our website at podpage.com/Thicc Radio. If you'd like to become a financial supporter of the show, you can donate through our PayPal, and you can always email us at thiccradio@gmail.com. So until next time, bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Let's talk about it.
Thicc Radio is a Spotify podcast.
Artwork, media design, editing, and production by James Heinzen.
With original theme music by CYMK.